Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of CNF Talks. Today it's my great pleasure to have with me Vivienne Artz, OBE, who's the chair of the Artificial Intelligence and Data Advisory Group of the International Business and Diplomatic Exchange. And Vivienne is a very well-known commentator on all things data and AI and an acknowledged expert. Vivienne's going to be chairing our upcoming Regulation of AI Summit on the 1st of October. Vivienne, welcome.
Thank you, Morris. Lovely to be here again, and I'm super excited about the conference on the 1st of October.
Fantastic. We're very much looking forward to it, having you involved. Let's turn to the first question. With the frontier models doubling in capability every 2 months, and leading firms, including Anthropic, calling for a pause on their development, whilst we take stock of their capabilities. Do you think that regulators need to consider whether the regulatory approaches that they adopted probably, 3 or 4 years ago now, still make sense? And furthermore, can regulators ever really keep up with the rapid developments in AI?
Well, I think it's an excellent question and very much a broad topic within the summit that we are going to be exploring on the 1st of October. The reality is that the pace of technological innovation is unprecedented, and it's at a global scale. So it is the nature of regulation that it tends to follow. But what we're seeing is that regulation is evolving in some jurisdictions more quickly than others. Perhaps in the EU, they had their EU AI Act out there before most other jurisdictions, but they're now updating it. In the UK, we have an AI action plan, but we don't actually have specific AI regulation at this time. So it's always the nature of regulation that it is there to exercise statutory and delegated authority, to supervise and enforce and maintain standards across sectors. And basically what they do is ensure compliance with law. Where we don't have specific AI law, there is nothing for them to specifically regulate in relation to AI. But what we are seeing is that they're using their existing powers to regulate AI, as it is another way of doing business. It is another way of engaging with society, or another use that government can actually make. So while there isn't specific AI regulation out there for them to enforce and to monitor in many instances, they are nonetheless issuing guidance, and they're also using their existing powers to regulate AI. And I think in this very transitional phase, it also gives regulators an opportunity to better understand where there are gaps. And in the UK, one of the things that we're seeing is we have the Data Regulators Cooperation Forum, and that's Digital Regulators Cooperation Forum is actually, I think, what it is. And that's actually 4 regulators coming together to look at AI and data and digital issues that cross all their different boundaries. So looking beyond the silos in which they regulate, actually those bits that join them together.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds very, very positive in terms of the UK approach, entirely flexible and dealing with things as they emerge. But I wonder whether the speed with which they're emerging is a real challenge. You know, for instance, at our recent City Week event, we had the privilege of having the head of the CFTC speaking. And one of his comments was that they were currently looking at how you would seek to regulate an autonomous agent using a digital wallet online to make money, making its own decisions as it went, changing its strategy as it went. And it throws up lots of questions. A, how do you regulate it so it doesn't do things which you don't want? But if it has done things that you don't want, if it's got involved in some business line or perhaps deep fakes, where does the liability stop, this whole notion of agentic accountability? And how do you regulate around that?
It's an excellent question. The agentic AI, 12 months ago, we were talking about it as fantastic theory. And now we're seeing businesses actually implementing agentic AI within their organizations. I was looking at a startup the other day, and you can basically have all these little agents, and they're very user friendly. You don't even have to know how to code. You can just ask them to do stuff on your behalf. And obviously they've got access to everything that you have. And so when it works brilliantly, it's incredibly useful. When it doesn't, my goodness, the repercussions could be very, very significant. It's a difficult question in terms of how do we deal with those autonomous agents, and where does the liability sit? And I think what we're doing at the moment is going back to first principles on liability and responsibility. What complicates that is the very many players that are involved in terms of the development of agentic AI. So if you think about the data that they learn from, who's actually developed them, who's provided them, who's curated them, who's using them, with whom, in which jurisdictions. This technology wasn't designed for multiple or one jurisdiction in mind. It was designed for a purpose. And I think the challenge for business is being able to put the guardrails around the technology that they're using so that it is actually complied within the jurisdictions in which they are operating. And so you can see this desire to slow down, as you asked in your first question, which is, whoa, there's just so much to do to make sure we get this right. Perhaps we do need to press the pause button. But the reality is that too many others are speeding ahead in any event. And so the legislators and the regulators need to keep up. And a lot of what they're doing to keep up is things like regulatory sandboxes. And actually in the UK, one of the things we're quite good at is those consultations, which is, I think we need to put out guidance. Let's engage business and consult before we do, to make sure that it is aligned with both the factual and technical realities, which we're seeking to address, and also business interests, so we don't have those unintended consequences, which could lead to very negative repercussions for everybody. So I think it's a learning space for all of us. We're all trying to do this properly, and I think the best thing we can do is hold hands and do it together.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier in your comments to the response to the first question about the different approaches, the EU AI Act, the slightly more flexible UK approach through working through existing regulators. Obviously, in the US, there are various state rules and so on. California's perhaps slightly more advanced. But clearly, there's a fair amount of regulatory divergence. And what do you think this means for businesses, and what can be done about that?
It's a huge challenge for business, because business for so many years has been, particularly global business, has been operating on the basis that we could centralize and roll out at scale. I mean, that's the other piece, is that customers want the same service in different jurisdictions. Actually, you don't want to have a completely different service in one jurisdiction from another. Obviously, things need to be customized a little bit, but not too much. The challenge we have now, of course, is with this regulatory divergence, is it's almost impossible to roll out anything on a global level at a standardized or in a standardized way, because the development of those laws and regulations and requirements is becoming quite bespoke and quite unique in each and every jurisdiction. And as you mentioned, the US is approaching this at a state-by-state level. China has its own approach. The EU already set out the EU AI Act, and it is now amending it. And the UK is exploring lots of different ways in which it can regulate, and other jurisdictions are speeding ahead as well. So I think for business, it's an incredibly challenging time, and they're having to be very careful about what they implement and where and how. And that comes at a real cost in terms of the cost of compliance. And then where does that cost go? Often onto consumers. And the impact of that, I think we also need to think about, is that it's one thing for huge businesses to be doing anything in that space, but it is quite another when we're also talking about SMEs. And what we're seeing is actually impacts for SMEs that they're having much, much lower levels of adoption of AI than big corporates. And so we also need to be very concerned about two tiers within our jurisdictions around business adoption and capability as well.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. For large companies, it's an easier burden to bear. Smaller companies, far more of a challenge. So switching subjects slightly, we hear a lot about sovereign AI as AI becomes more mainstream. How do you think that's going to work, say, here in the UK? Can we achieve AI sovereignty in the sense of having lots of the suppliers literally from the UK, or do you think that's is an impossibility, given the dominance of the US in AI suppliers, for instance?
Again, a really interesting question. We've talked about sovereign AI in the past in a theoretical way, but I think it really came to the fore when the US Department of Commerce issued the Export Control Directive in relation to Anthropic's most advanced AI models. And I
Yeah.
think it was a tremendous wake-up call to the rest of the world to say, oh my goodness, this technology that we rely on so heavily
Mm.
actually comes with restrictions. And so what are we going to do about it? Now we can think about it negatively and we can say, oh my goodness, do we have a systemic risk here? Do we have an over-reliance? Are we going to get left behind, etc.? But the other side of it, of course, is I think it is that wake-up call, which is perhaps we really should be supporting and growing our own sovereign solutions and
Yeah.
supporting the innovation, and particularly from those SMEs within our own jurisdictions. But sovereign doesn't mean that it all has to be physically located, developed, and used within jurisdiction. There's different ways in which we operate in a sovereign environment, and it would apply in different ways to different sectors as well. So
Mm.
for government sensitive data, yes, we do want to ring fence that. But what we're also seeing is a tremendous sophistication evolving in terms of the ability to take some of these big models and actually to house them locally, to support them and enhance them in a much more closed environment. So we can leverage some of the benefits of the bigger learnings that have taken place, but
Mm.
actually on a customized model that serves a particular purpose for a particular organization in a specific way that provides that defense against cyber risk and that defense for the privacy and security of the information and the activities of that model as well. So sovereign is evolving very, very quickly. It's coming in different forms, but I do think it's also the driver for tremendous innovation more broadly across the world.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to feel that we could capture that AI innovation that's generated here in the UK, wouldn't it? But so often the companies that do develop it head off to the US markets. So I guess that is that part of it, how we ensure that we keep AI pioneers in this country, that they list on the London Stock Exchange, they don't disappear off to NASDAQ. Is that part, do you think, or should be part of the strategy?
I think we very much want our companies to be as successful as possible.
Yeah.
And what we do see is that they are often moving to other jurisdictions in order to scale up. It's an ongoing issue for us and also for some other jurisdictions as well. It's not just a UK issue. The other
No,
piece
that's
of it
true.
is that we're seeing more in terms of private equity.
Mm.
So while the listing market is important for us, I think we mustn't also forget those privately owned companies
Mm.
and actually where and by whom they're being owned as well. It's part of a much broader discussion around the sovereign AI piece
Yeah.
and sovereignty of national assets and what's in the national interest.
Mm.
And we need to remember, of course, as a trading nation and as an island,
Mm.
that we're there not just to serve for our own country needs, but we are actually an international venue. So it's about being at home but opening the
Mm.
doors and the windows as well.
Very good. So I think that's a positive note on which to end. We have a very strong private equity industry, and maybe that plugs the gaps and helps our innovators. Vivienne, we probably run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today. For our viewers, if you'd like to find out further details about the upcoming conference, the AI Regulation Summit on the 1st of October, please do visit our website, www.cityandfinancial.com, where you'll be able to find further information and also register to obtain your place. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much for coming along to the interview today, Vivienne. We look forward to seeing you on the 1st of October.
I look forward to hearing from all the amazing speakers as well. It promises to be an excellent day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.